Right now, without your knowledge, someone in your life is running an experiment on you. Not in a laboratory, not with equipment, but in the middle of a normal conversation, at a dinner table, in a meeting room, using nothing but a carefully placed silence, a well-timed interruption, or a joke that felt like a knife wearing a smile. They are not testing your intelligence, your credentials, or your strength. They are testing something far more specific and far more dangerous. Whether your psychological foundation can be moved, whether your reactions can be predicted, and whether the version of you they are looking at is a man with real ground beneath him or a man performing stability while quietly standing on sand. Most men go their entire lives failing tests they never knew were being administered, wondering why certain people stopped respecting them, why certain rooms feel different, why the dynamic shifted without a single conversation about it, never understanding that the shift happened in 5 seconds during what they dismissed as a normal interaction, when they gave the wrong answer to a question that was never spoken out loud. They know how much pressure you absorb before you react. They know how long your silence lasts before you break it. They know the exact tone of voice that makes you shrink. And they learned all of this not through a conversation, but through a series of quiet, calculated experiments they ran on you while you were busy thinking you were just having a normal interaction. This is called social probing, and it is older than any psychology textbook that has tried to name it. There was a man who spent his entire career mapping the hidden mechanics of human behavior, not for philosophers, not for academics, but for the people who actually held power and needed to understand what everyone around them was really doing beneath the surface of politeness and loyalty. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli, and what he documented was so precise, so uncomfortably accurate about human nature, that the institutions of his era did not debate his work, they banned it. They placed it on the list of forbidden texts. And then the same men who banned it publicly had it copied and delivered to their private chambers. Because he did not write about how people should behave. He wrote about how they actually do. And what he understood about the way people probe, test, and map each other before deciding who they can break is exactly what the next few minutes are going to put directly in your hands. He wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody to see you, to few to come in touch with you." He was not writing about appearances, he was writing about the gap between what people see and what they feel, and how the man who controls that gap controls every room he enters. Today I am going to show you the 5 micro-tests that people are running on you right now, what each test is designed to find, exactly how it operates beneath the surface of normal interaction, and the precise response that does not just pass the test, but permanently closes the door to anyone who tries to run it on you again. Because once you can name the test, you cannot be broken by it. Test 1. The withdrawal test. Silent treatment. You sent the message. You watched the 2 ticks appear. Read receipts on. Message delivered. Message seen. Nothing. An hour passes. You check again. Still nothing. You write another message. Smaller than the first one. Softer in tone. Slightly apologetic in posture, even though you have not yet identified what you are apologizing for. "Hey, you okay?" And right there in that second message, you failed the test. Not because checking on someone is weak, but because in this specific situation, that second message was not concern, it was a surrender. It was you, unable to tolerate the ambiguity of silence, reaching across the gap to repair a connection you were not responsible for breaking. And the person on the other side, whether they were conscious of it or not, registered that response as data, as confirmation of something they suspected, that your psychological stability is contingent on their availability, that their silence is a lever, that withdrawing access to themselves produces a specific, predictable, and exploitable reaction in you. This is called the withdrawal test, and it is the most sophisticated emotional probe in the social predator's arsenal. Here is how it works in real terms. The relationship is normal, things are fine, and then without warning, without explanation, without any identifiable trigger, they go cold. Texts are answered in single words after long delays. Plans are suddenly uncertain. The warmth that was previously present disappears as if it was never there. They become, to use the precise language of this technique, a wall of ice. And you sit on your side of the wall trying to figure out what you did. That is the test. Not the silence itself, what the silence does to you. In psychology, this is called intermittent reinforcement withdrawal, a behavioral mechanism where the removal of a previously given reward produces a compulsive seeking response in the person who has come to depend on it. It is the same mechanic that makes gambling addictive. The slot machine does not keep paying out. It pays out sometimes, and the uncertainty of the interval is precisely what keeps you pulling the lever. When someone who has been warm suddenly becomes cold without explanation, your nervous system does not process it as information, it processes it as threat. The primal alarm that once meant the tribe is withdrawing, survival is at risk, activates, and from that alarm state, rational decision-making collapses. You stop asking, why are they doing this, and start asking, what did I do? That shift from their behavior to your culpability is the entire point of the test. Because the moment you believe you caused the silence, you also believe you are responsible for ending it. And the moment you reach across to end it, you have handed them something they were specifically probing to find. The proof that their absence moves your needle. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge by the eye rather than the hand, because everyone can see, but few can feel." What he meant was this: people respond to appearances, to surfaces, to the visible reaction. The man who chases the silence appears desperate. The man who mirrors it appears indifferent. And in the psychology of power, indifference is the most expensive thing you can display. Not performed indifference, not cold theatrics. Genuine, mission-anchored indifference, the kind that comes from a man who has a life so full, so directed, so internally occupied, that the temperature of someone else's mood does not regulate his own. Let me give you the example plainly. When someone withdraws to see if you will chase, chasing is like a man screaming at the ocean to come back after the tide goes out. The ocean does not hear you. The ocean does not care about your screaming. The tide operates on its own schedule, according to its own mechanics, entirely indifferent to your desperation. And the longer you stand on the shore yelling, the more you confirm that you do not understand what the ocean is. Mirror the silence. Not as a game, not as a countermove in a manipulation chess match, but as the authentic expression of a man who does not require another person's presence to remain stable. When they go cold, return to your work, return to your mission, return to the version of yourself that existed before they entered the frame and was doing fine. And if they never warm back up, that is not a loss. That is the test, revealing exactly what the relationship was built on. Their control over your stability. And now that you have removed that control, the architecture collapses, which tells you everything you needed to know about what the architecture was made of. The unbreakable man does not chase silence, he occupies it. Now pay attention to what comes next, because this one has been happening to you in broad daylight, in rooms full of people, and you have been absorbing it without a word. Test 2. The interruption test. Vocal dominance. You are mid-sentence. You are making a point, a real one, something that matters, something you have thought through. And before the sentence is complete, before the thought has landed, before you have finished the word that closes the idea, they cut you off. Not because they have an emergency, not because your building is on fire. They simply start speaking. A new topic, a different angle. Their voice occupying the space your voice was filling, as if your sentence was a placeholder, and they just arrived to claim the actual position. And what do? You stop. You fold your sentence back into yourself unfinished and wait for them to complete theirs, and then, because you have been conditioned to be agreeable, to not make the moment uncomfortable, to prioritize social smoothness over social sovereignty, you either wait to see if you can re-enter or you abandon the point entirely. That is the test. That is the result they were looking for, not your silence specifically. The speed of your silence, how quickly and completely you surrendered the floor the moment they took it. In social hierarchy research, this is called vocal territory. The concept that in any group dynamic, the person who controls the airspace controls the perceived status. The man who speaks without being interrupted is unconsciously categorized as higher status than the man whose speech is regularly disrupted. And the man who stops speaking the instant he is interrupted has publicly declared himself a follower. He did not announce it. He did not sign a document. He simply stopped talking. And everyone in the room registered it. Not consciously in most cases, but the human brain is a social hierarchy processor running constantly in the background. It catalogues who holds the floor, who yields it, and who reclaims it. and it assigns status accordingly. Machiavelli understood that the court was a permanent status performance. He wrote that a prince must carry himself in such a way that no one dares to deceive or trifle with him. The operative word is carry, not announce, not demand. Carry through posture, through tone, through the specific behavioral signals that communicate to the social environment. This man's territory is not available for casual occupation. Your vocal territory is one of those signals. Here is the rebuttal, and it is precise. When someone cuts you off, do not stop. Do not accelerate. Do not raise your voice. Maintain exactly the volume and pace you were using before the interruption, and continue your sentence to its natural end. What this does physiologically to the person who interrupted you is remarkable. They were expecting the silence. They had already mapped the interaction with your compliance as the next data point. When the compliance does not arrive, when your voice simply continues, calm and unhurried, as if their interruption was background noise in a city, you have learned to navigate. Their system has to recalibrate, because you did not acknowledge the breach. And the most disorienting thing you can do to a social probe is refuse to confirm the result. The probe was designed to find, when you finish your point, look at them, calmly, with the mild analytical curiosity of a scientist observing a lab specimen, and say, you were saying, that sentence is a masterpiece of social recalibration. It acknowledges that they spoke. It suggests you were listening, and it quietly, devastatingly repositions you as the person conducting the conversation rather than the person being conducted. Think of it this way. Allowing someone to interrupt you repeatedly is like a chess player leaving his king in check and then asking why he keeps losing. Every time you fold your sentence, you are moving your king deeper into danger. Every time you hold your ground, you are telling the board and everyone watching the board that your pieces know where they belong. The man who cannot be interrupted cannot be dismissed, and the man who cannot be dismissed cannot be broken. What you just learned about vocal space connects directly to something deeper, something that has been running on your time, your energy, and your respect for years, and you called it something entirely different. Test 3. The boundary probe. The violation test. It started small. A favor that was slightly inconvenient, but not unreasonable. You said yes because saying no felt disproportionate, like being rigid about something that did not matter enough. Then there was another small thing. Then another. Each one individually defensible, but there is a pattern running beneath each request that you have been too close to see. They are not testing whether you will say yes to a small thing. They are testing whether your yes ever becomes a no. Because if your yes never becomes a no, if you consistently prioritize their comfort over your boundary, then you have not been flexible. You have been mapped. You have shown them that your limit does not exist. And a man without a visible limit is a man without protected ground. In psychology, this is called boundary erosion through incremental escalation. The probing party introduces gradually increasing violations, each slightly beyond the last accepted one, to identify the precise point of resistance. If no resistance is encountered, the escalation continues until the target is fully managed. This is not always conscious. The colleague who is always slightly late is not necessarily running a calculated campaign. But the result of your consistent accommodation is identical. Whether they are strategic or simply careless, your boundary has been communicated. It is permeable. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Fear in Machiavelli's language means consequence. It means the other person understands that crossing your boundary produces a result they do not want to repeat. The man who lets small violations slide has removed the consequence. And a world without consequence is a world where everything you have been tolerating, which you call tolerance, is actually erosion. Someone arrives late. No apology. They sit down and proceed as if the agreed time was a suggestion. The right response is not a confrontation. It is the enforcement of a price without a speech. You start without them. You finish early. You leave when your allocated time expires. You do not lend again to the person who borrowed and forgot. You do not make a second appointment easy for the person who disrespected the first. Every resource you have carries a price. When someone violates the terms without consequence, you have told them the resource is free, and nobody protects what is free. Tolerating small violations because they are small is like leaving your front door open because it is only drizzling. It is not the drizzle you should worry about. It is what walks through the open door while you decide whether the rain was serious enough to close it. The servant reflex, the compulsive accommodation of other people's comfort at the expense of your own ground, is not kindness. It is the behavioral signature of a man who has never decided what his time is worth. Until you decide, other people will decide for you. What you have understood about boundaries is about to go somewhere darker, into the space where the probe is disguised as something you are supposed to accept, even enjoy, and this one operates through the weapon you never thought to defend against. Humor. Test 4. The Schrödinger's joke. The shield test. They said something that made the room laugh, and the thing they said was about you. Something specific, about a decision you made, a failure you had, a vulnerability they identified, delivered in a tone that made everyone comfortable, dismissing it as humor, delivered with the social coating that makes the target of the joke the only person in the room who cannot object. Because if you object, you are sensitive. If you laugh, you have conceded. You are standing inside a trap engineered to have no acceptable exit. And the engineer is watching your face with the calm attention of someone who has run this experiment before. This is the Schrödinger's joke, named for the quantum paradox, where a thing exists in two states simultaneously until observed. The joke exists as both humor and insult until you respond. Your response collapses the state. Laugh and it becomes humor at your expense, which you authorized. React and it becomes sensitivity that confirms the insult was accurate. Either outcome serves the test. Both doors lead to the same room. In dark psychology, this is called a double bind, a communication structure where both possible responses produce a negative outcome for the receiver. The person deploying it can always say, "I was just joking. Why are you so serious?" Which, of course, is itself a double bind. Machiavelli understood that the direct attack is the amateur's move. The sophisticated player wraps the blade in laughter, in concern, in the language of honesty. The joke that is not a joke is a blade wrapped in laughter. Every time you laugh at an insult to your own character, you authorize the next one. You set the price of your dignity at 0 and then wonder why everyone treats it as worthless. The rebuttal requires nerve the first time. Do not laugh. Do not react with anger. Both are the doors. The trap is designed to funnel you through. Instead, pause. Let the room's laughter complete. Look at the person with the expression of someone genuinely curious about something they do not understand. Then ask simply, "What was funny about that?" That question is a precision instrument. The moment a joke must be explained, it stops being a joke. The protective coating of humor dissolves. What remains is the naked structure of the insult, visible to everyone, exposed for exactly what it was. And the person who delivered it is now standing in the room without their weapon. Letting someone insult you through a joke and laughing is like a surgeon who lets someone pick his pocket in the operating room because making a scene would disturb the procedure. The theft is still theft. Your compliance does not make it acceptable, it makes it a precedent. The man who asks what was funny about that keeps his instruments. Nothing leaves the room without his permission. 4 tests down. This final one operates with the most witnesses, the most stakes, the most permanent damage if you fail it. Because this test is not run in private, it is run where everyone can see. Test 5. The public diminishment. You were in the room, the meeting, the dinner table, the social gathering, and they said something into the room with the full awareness of everyone present that reduced you, referenced a past failure, a current limitation, a characteristic framed as a flaw, delivered casually, almost incidentally, as if it were simply a fact being stated for the record. And the room heard it. That is the test, not the comment itself, what the room does with it, and what you do while the room is deciding. In the 5 to 10 seconds that follow a public diminishment, the social hierarchy of every person present is being renegotiated in real time. Everyone is running the same unconscious calculation. How does the target respond? If the target absorbs it in silence, the statement stands as fact. If the target reacts emotionally, the statement gains credibility. If the target responds with calm, clinical precision, the statement is neutralized, and the person who delivered it has revealed something about themselves. It weaponizes the audience. The social cost of any visible reaction feels enormous when people are watching. Most men choose silence because they calculate the risk of the alternative and tell themselves they will address it later, privately, when the audience is gone. That is a surrender dressed as strategy. Machiavelli was explicit. A prince who fails to address a public challenge to his authority has not avoided conflict. He has confirmed his weakness to the entire court. The silence is not neutral, it is a concession, and concessions made publicly become the new baseline for how you are treated. In behavioral psychology, this is called social proof reinforcement. A behavior tolerated in public becomes normalized through witness. Every person in that room has now seen what is acceptable in your presence. They have updated their model of you. You are no longer the man you were before the comment. You are the man who absorbed it. The rebuttal requires a decision made in advance, not in the moment, that your public sovereignty is non-negotiable. When the diminishment lands, you do not raise your voice. You do not perform outrage. You do not take the person aside for a private conversation that removes all witnesses from the resolution. You address it in the room, in the moment. That is an interesting perspective. It is also inaccurate. 7 words. No elaboration, no justification, no emotional color. Those 7 words acknowledge the statement without fearing it, challenge its accuracy in front of every witness, and offer no further purchase for the exchange to continue. The person who made the statement is now holding their diminishment in a room that is looking at them instead of you. The frame has been reclaimed. You do not get credit for addressing privately what happened publicly. The room that witnessed the diminishment will not be informed of the private conversation. They will only remember what they saw, and what they saw was you absorbing the hit. The resolution must happen in the same arena as the violation. Anything less is not resolution, it is administration. There is a story from ancient Rome that belongs here. Cato, the younger Roman statesman, arguably the most incorruptible man in the Republic, was struck in the face during a heated public dispute. The man who struck him immediately panicked, expecting rage, expecting political consequence. Cato said nothing. He wiped his face. He continued the conversation as if the strike had been a passing irrelevance. When the man came to him later to apologize, terrified of what was coming, Cato looked at him blankly and said, "I do not remember being hit." This was not weakness. This was the most devastating response available. To acknowledge the strike was to acknowledge the striker. Cato refused to grant the man the validation of existing in his emotional reality. The public diminishment had been delivered, and Cato deleted it from the record by making it so beneath his threshold that the room understood the striker had failed to reach a level worth engaging. The man who responds to public diminishment with cold precision does not look like he is winning an argument. He looks like a man who does not fight small fires. He looks like a man who controls the weather. Now step back from the 5 tests and look at what they share. Every single one is a probe for the same thing. One question asked in 5 different languages. Does this man's internal state depend on what I do? The withdrawal test asks, does my absence move him? The interruption test asks, does my voice dominate his? The boundary probe asks, does my convenience override his limits? The Schrödinger's joke asks, does my judgment threaten his composure? The public diminishment asks, does my audience destabilize his position? 5 tests. 1 question. And the man who has built a life, a mission, a purpose that exists completely independent of other people's behavior, that man answers every test the same way. No. Not with a speech, not with a confrontation, with the behavioral evidence of a man who does not require anything external to remain whole. That is what Machiavelli was describing when he wrote about the prince, who could not be deceived or trifled with. Not a man with bodyguards and political allies, but a man whose internal architecture was so complete, so self-sustaining, so anchored to something real that the social probes of the court simply found no purchase. The arrow that finds no wound to enter does not penetrate. It falls. Here is what changes when you start passing these tests. Not after one conversation, but over weeks, as your behavior consistently reflects a man who knows the architecture of what is being run on him and refuses to produce the desired result. People stop probing. Not because they become kinder, because the data stops coming back useful. In behavioral science, this is called extinction. When a behavior stops receiving reinforcement, it gradually ceases. Every probe that produces no reaction extinguishes the probability of the next probe. Every time you mirror the silence, hold the floor, enforce the boundary, ask what was funny, and reclaim the frame in public, you are not just winning that interaction. You are updating the data file that person holds on you. You are permanently changing the answer to the question, "Can I break this man?" And as the answer changes, consistently, behaviorally, without announcement, the category you occupy in their psychology changes. You stop being a target. You become a reference point. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the most powerful empire on earth and dealt with manipulation and probing from the people closest to him every single day of his reign, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was not writing philosophy, he was writing operational protocol. The man whose stability depends on outside events can be broken by outside events. The man whose stability is internal has removed the control panel from other people's hands. You cannot probe what you cannot reach. Most men will finish this video, feel the recognition, and go back to absorbing the tests. Not because they lack understanding, because understanding is not transformation. Transformation is the daily decision in the moment of the probe, in the second between stimulus and response, to be the man who has already decided who he is and refuses to let someone else's experiment redefine him. That decision must be made before the test arrives, because in the moment of the test, there is no time to decide. There is only the behavior your prior decisions have installed. Decide now. Decide that your silence is chosen, not surrendered. That your floor is held, not abandoned. That your boundary has a price. That your dignity is not available for the social comfort of people who test it. That your public position is defended in public with calm, with precision, and without apology. Decide that you are the man the tests cannot map. Because that man is not just harder to break, he is impossible to break. And impossible to break is the only category worth occupying. If this reached something in you, if something here named a dynamic you have been living but could not yet articulate, like this video, not as a courtesy, because it tells me this content found the right person. If you are not subscribed, do it now. This channel does not deal in comfort, it deals in clarity that is difficult to sit with because it is true. There are frameworks that go deeper than this: psychological defense systems, dark influence mechanics, covert manipulation architectures, precision analysis of human behavior that the algorithm does not reward and this format cannot fully contain. Those exist behind the join button below. Inside is a small, deliberately small circle of men who are done being navigated by dynamics they cannot name, men who want the unfiltered breakdown of human psychology, the mechanics of power and social warfare that most people spend their entire lives operating inside without ever understanding. If you are a tourist, keep scrolling. This is not designed for you. But if you watched this entire video and felt not just recognition but the specific hunger of someone who wants to go further, the join button is below. The men inside already know why they pressed it. You either know too, or you are not ready yet. The circle remains small by design. You stayed until the end. That discipline is rare. Protect it the same way this video told you to protect everything else that belongs to you, selectively, deliberately, only where it returns something real. The tests are already running. They were running before this video started. The only thing that has changed is that you can now see them. And a man who can see the test cannot be broken by it. I will see you in the next one.